Spirit Walker Chapter 2. "Where's Finn Keddin?" cried Torak when he reached the Raven camp. "In the next valley," said a man, gutting salmon, "gathering dogwood for arrow shafts." "What about Sayan? Where's the mage?" "Casting her bones," said a girl, threading fish heads on sinew. "She's on the rock. You'd better wait till she comes down." Torak ground his teeth in frustration. There was the Raven mage, perched high on the guardian rock, a small, bird-like figure scowling at the bones, while beside her the clan guardian folded its stiff black wings and uttered a harsh "Cack." Who else could he tell? Wren was out hunting. Oslak, whose shelter he shared, was nowhere in sight. By the smoking racks he spotted Sayalot and Poi, the Raven boys closest to him in age, but they were the last ones he'd approach. They didn't like him because he was an outsider. Everyone else was too busy getting in the salmon to listen to some wild tale about a sick man in the forest. And as Torak looked about, he almost began to doubt it himself. Everything seemed so normal. The Ravens had built their camp where the wide water crashes out of a shadowy gorge and thunders past the rock, then over the rapids. It was up these rapids that the salmon fought their way each summer on their mysterious journey from the sea to the mountains. Always they were driven back by the fury of the river, and always they tried again, hurtling through the foaming chaos in twisting, shining leaps, until they died of exhaustion, or reached the calmer waters beyond the gorge, or were speared by the ravens. To catch them, the clan sank poles in the riverbed and spanned the wide water with a wicker walkway just strong enough to support a few fishermen with spears. It was skilled work, and anyone falling in risked crippling injury or worse, for the river was relentless, and the rocks jutting from the rapids as sharp as broken teeth. But the prize was great. The ravens' shelters stood empty. Everybody was at the smoking racks, getting in the day's haul before it spoiled. Men, women and children scraped off scales and gutted fish, while others sliced strips of orange flesh from the bones, leaving them joined at the tail for easy hanging on the racks. Sayalot and Poi pounded juniper berries, which would be mixed with the dried, shredded meat to keep it sweet, or mask its taste if it was not. Nothing was wasted. The skins would be cured and fashioned into waterproof tinder pouches. The eyes and bones would make glue. The livers and roe would provide a delicacy at night meal and an offering for the guardian and the spirits of the salmon. Elsewhere in the forest, other clans camped by other rivers to take part in the bounty. Boar clan, willow clan, otter, viper, and where the people did not camp, other hunters came, bears, lynx, eagles, wolves, all celebrating the running of the salmon, which gave them new strength after the rigours of winter. This was how it had always been since the beginning. Surely, thought Torak, one sick man couldn't change all that. Then he remembered the cankered face and the pus-filmed eyes. At that moment, Oslak emerged from their shelter, and Torak's heart leapt. Oslak would know what to do. But, to his astonishment, Oslak hardly listened as he blurted out his story, seeming more engrossed in retying the binding on his fishing spear. "You say the man was Boar clan," he said, frowning and scratching the back of his hand. "Well then, his mage will take care of him. Here," he tossed Torak the spear. "Get down to the stepping stones and let me see you take a salmon." Torak was bewildered. "But Oslak—" "Go on, go!" snapped Oslak. Torak gave a start. It was unlike Oslak to get cross. In fact, it never happened. He was a huge gentleman with a tangled beard and a slightly alarming face, having lost one ear and a chunk of cheek in a misunderstanding with a wolverine. It was just like him not to blame the wolverine. "My fault," he'd say if anyone asked. "I gave her a fright." That was Oslak. He and his mate Vedna had been the first to offer Torak a place in their shelter when he came to live with the ravens, and they'd always been kind to him. But Oslak was also the strongest man in the clan, so Torak made no further protest and took the spear. As he did, he saw something that stopped him dead. The back of Oslak's hand was covered in blisters. What's that on your hand?" he said. "Midge bites," said Oslak, scratching harder. "Worst I've ever had. Keep me awake all night." "They don't look like midge bites," said Torak. "Do they hurt?" Oslak was still scratching. "Strange. Feels as if my name soul's leaking out, but that can't be, can it?" He peered at Torak as if the light hurt, and his face was fearful and childlike. Torak swallowed. I don't think you can lose your name soul through a cut, only through your mouth if you're dreaming or sick. He paused. Are you sick? Sick? Why would I be sick? A shiver shook his whole body. But I can't hold on to my souls. Torak's hand tightened on the spear. I'll fetch Sayan. Oslak scowled. I don't need Sayan. Now go. Suddenly, he wasn't Oslak anymore. He was a big man looming over Torak, clenching his fists. Then he seemed to come to himself. Just leave me be, eh? Go on, Thul's waiting. All right, Oslak, said Torak as levelly as he could. He was halfway to the river's edge when he turned and looked back. Oslak was still scratching. Leaking out, he muttered. Then he went inside the shelter, and Torak saw the raw patch behind his remaining ear where the hair had been yanked out, the thick honey-coloured scab like birch canker. Torak felt a coldness settle inside him. He raced down to the stepping stones where Oslak's younger brother squatted to clean his knife. Thul, he cried, I think Oslak's sick. His tail came out in a breathless jumble, and Thul wasn't impressed. Torak, those are midge bites. It happens every summer. They drive him mad. It isn't midges, said Torak. Well, he's fine now, said Thul, pointing at the walkway. Sure enough, there was Oslak, crouching with a spear, and on the end of it, a wriggling salmon. Biting his lip, Torak glanced about. It all seemed so normal. Children played with glittering handfuls of fish scales. Reckless young ravens teased the dogs by pecking their tails. Thul's son, Dari, 5 summers old, splashed in the shallows with the pine-cone Torak which Oslak had made for him. Filled with misgiving, Torak clutched his spear and waded in. The stepping stones were 4 boulders between the walkway and the rapids where beginners learn to keep their balance. Thul pointed to the first stone, but Torak made his way precariously to the 4th, placing himself mid-river and downstream from Oslak. He didn't know what he expected, only that he had to keep watch. Keep your eyes on the salmon, shouted Thul from the bank, not on the water. Torak found that impossible. The rocks were slippery with lichen, and around him the green water boiled, with now and then a silver flash of salmon. The fishing spear was long and heavy, making it hard to balance. It had 2 barbed antler prongs for gripping and holding the fish, if Torak caught any, which he didn't in all previous attempts. When he'd lived with his father, he'd only fished with a hook and line. With a spear, as Sealot never tired of remarking, he was as clumsy as a child of 7 summers. He forced himself to concentrate. Stabbed with his spear, missed, nearly toppled in. Oh, let them get past you before taking aim, yelled Thul. Catch them on their way down, when they're tired. Torak tried again, and again he missed. From the smoking racks came a hoot of laughter. Torak's face flamed. Sealot was enjoying this. Better, called Thul with more kindness than true. Keep at it, I'll come back later. He went off to feed the fires, leaving Dari in the shallows, crooning to his auroch. For a while, Torak forgot everything as he strove to catch a fish without either dropping the spear or falling in. Soon he was soaked in spray, and the river was angry. Every so often it hurled a huge wave against his rock. Suddenly he heard a shout from the walkway. He jerked up his head, then breathed out in relief. Oslak had speared another salmon. With 1 blow he'd killed it, then knelt to pull it off the spear. He's all right, Torak told himself. As he watched, Oslak scratched his hand. Then he reached behind his ear and clawed the scab. The salmon slithered off the walkway. Oslak bared his teeth, wrenched off the scab, and ate it. Torak recoiled and nearly fell in. The sun went behind a cloud, the water turned black, the discarded salmon slid past, glaring at him with a dull, dead eye. He shot a glance at the shallows. Dari was gone. Another cry from upriver. He turned. Dari was on the walkway, tottering towards his uncle, who wasn't warning him back, but beckoning him. Come on, Dari, he shouted, his face distorted by horrible eagerness. Come to me, I won't let them take our souls. That's the end of the chapter. Let's see what happens in chapter 3.